Folks, we got a nice show today. Shane Ryan's going to be joining the show, who is an author of my favorite Ryder Cup book and maybe golf book ever written. So we're going to go deep into everything Ryder Cup. That's going to be objective from a journalist, an author, and it's going to be a little different, which I'm excited about. Before that, you're going to get yours truly opining a little bit about a couple different things. A big one is Bethpage Black. Bethpage Black, just a big announcement from the PGA of America. It's going to be hosting the KPMG Women's PGA Championship in a couple of years, 2033. It's going to be hosting the Men's PGA Championship yet again. And I really do go into how awesome of a venue I think that is, the direction that I think the PGA of America should focus on going when it comes to its identity and to other venues. And I really go through a good amount of the venues that have been U.S. Open venues, PGA Championship venues, Ryder Cup venues, where they should fit, and how I think the PGA Championship can really help to solidify its identity. And I think this is a great step towards that. And then the interview with Shane Ryan, where again, you're going to get all your Ryder Cup hype. He's been on golf shows, he's been all over the place right now as kind of the Ryder Cup expert and the Ryder Cup guy. It's all brought to you by Chevy, which is athletic, bold, and commanding. The Equinox EV is what we're here to talk about. It's going to help you show up in style. It's got the 17-inch diagonal center screen. You've heard us talk about this, but when you see it, it's 17-inch screen in the front is massive. It is all about the interior. As Frankie says, the Equinox EV offers 319 miles of EPA estimated electric range with front-wheel drive. It's got everything you could possibly want. It's 2025, and Chevy's been doing this for over 100 years. They've been making EVs for over a decade, and Equinox EV, it's the right one. It's the smartest choice that you can make. So when it comes to EVs, make sure you check out that Chevy Equinox EV. Let's do this. Let's talk some golf.
In the early 80s, it was super, super close to dying because it felt like they had tried everything. At that point, they had brought all of Europe on board. They had new sponsors, and still the Americans were just taking him to the cleaners every single time. And you had people like Tom Weiskopf skipped one year because he wanted to go hunting. Like, it was like, imagine that now. Imagine someone be like, I'm going to go hiking with my wife that weekend or whatever.
Foreplay, presented by Barstool Sports. We're going to have a lot of Ryder Cup chatter on this show, but we're not going to get it necessarily from a Xander Schauffele, who's going to be into the event. We're going to get it from Shane Ryan, who wrote, a book that I've touted a bunch as we get closer to these Ryder Cups. I always tout it, but The Cup They Couldn't Lose by Shane Ryan, America, the Ryder Cup, and the Long Road to Whistling Straits. This guy is he's a golf writer, journalist for Golf Digest, writes books, wrote the best book that I've ever read on the Ryder Cup, and one of the best golf books I've ever read. And I really want to get into his objective opinion on the Ryder Cup, what makes a good Ryder Cup captain, team, course importance, setup importance versus just are things a small sample size and we over prioritize how much an effect of this captain's choice made, of the course being set up this way made, all that stuff. So I'm really excited to get into that with Shane. And then we got a couple big things on our docket as well, including Bethpage Black. So Bethpage Black is Frankie and I talked about it in the last show, but Bethpage Black for me is just as good as it gets. I think the more gigantic golf tournaments and events that could be hosted at Bethpage Black and that can kind of utilize Bethpage Black and all that it is, the state park, how much it means to Long Island, to New York, to kind of the average bootstrap blue-collar golfer out there. It's just really cool to see that type of venue host something massive and host the best players in the world. And if you take folks back to 2002 when Bethpage Black hosted the U.S. Open for the first time, that was an enormous deal that a municipal, a city-owned public golf course was hosting a major championship for the first time. We've seen Torrey Pines do it since, and we've seen it a little bit more, but Bethpage announced, and our boy Beef was on site. So shout out to Beef, just being there for the announcement. Mr. PGA teaching professional, Barstool Beef, Cody Frankie removing his hat. He was there in person for the PGA of America's announcement that in just a few years, 2028, the KPMG Women's PGA Championship will be held at Bethpage. And then in 2033, the Men's PGA Championship will be held at Bethpage. I can't tell you enough how awesome that is to me. I can't tell you enough how much I believe Bethpage Black is the best PGA Championship venue that they've got. And I was sort of combing through, and I want to go through this a little bit, of the different venues and kind of where they rank, what direction the PGA should go into. And I know it's not PGA Championship week or month, but if you take yourself back, and of course PGA Championship and the Ryder Cup are run by the PGA of America. And so it's a big PGA of America type stretch here this month. They deserve it. They do amazing things, their whole organization, and the thousands, tens of thousands of teaching professionals and PGA professionals. They're the best in the amount of work that they do to grow the game, to improve people's games, to run pro shops and venues and facilities around the world, and especially this country. It goes such a long way, and they're enormously impactful on why and how we all love the game of golf. But PGA Championship month, we always kind of get into what is the PGA Championship, and if you were on their board, if you were hired as a consultant, if you were able to sit down and have a beer with some, incredibly important figures from the PGA of America, what would you tell them about how to make the PGA Championship not clearly the fourth major, which I think we all agree and we all kind of discuss in real time when that's occurring, that it is. It used to be Glory's last shot. And everybody's thrown at, sometimes we talk, should they go back to match play? At one point, it was match play. Should they take it overseas has been discussed a lot. Should they grab something that is going to make it have a more clear identity? And I think Bethpage Black and taking this event there is such a step in the right direction of kind of clarifying and owning the identity of the PGA. When I look at the different venues for the PGA Championship, it's always tricky where we have the USGA and we have the PGA of America, and they own specific golf courses for specific periods of time. It's usually the USGA first. It's usually them hosting US Opens. And then if the PGA jumps in there and hosts a PGA championship or a big event there, the US Open almost discards that place as like it's been tainted or something somehow, which to a degree I get, where it's like you're protective of your venues, and the USGA over the last handful of years has committed hard to much closer to the Open Championship kind of model of a Rota. Everybody calls it the Open Rota. It's been called that for a very long time. There's kind of building a U.S. Open Rota that has always sort of in the shadows existed, but not been fully recognized, talked about. And then they came out with Pinehurst several years ago and legitimately called Pinehurst number 2 the first official U.S. Open anchor site. They built an office. It's like one of their HQs instead of being in Far Hills, New Jersey, and exclusively there. They've got an entire USGA facility, testing facility, headquarter right next to Pinehurst Clubhouse, and they kind of made Pinehurst the spot. And then we know the U.S. Open spots, right? And they've sort of committed to making those the spots. Pebble Beach, Shinnecock Hills, Oakmont, Wingfoot. Like these are the U.S. Open venues, and people know that. And they've done, the USGA has done cool experiments with places like Chambers Bay and Bethpage Black. They went there twice, 02, 09, Lucas Glover. And so there is this interesting kind of relationship with those two gigantic organizations and the venues that are eligible to host major championships and Ryder Cups in the United States. And we talk a lot, we have talked a lot about more venues being playing host and being given the opportunity to play host to massive tournaments in the world of golf is something that we would like to see more of. Philly Cricket Club this year playing host to a PGA Tour event up in Philadelphia. I mean, that was sick. People loved it. Old school architecture. The players were loving it. And, there was the 90-yard par 3. It was just really cool and kind of a golden age of architecture, throwback, a marrying of those two worlds kind of, and seeing how it went. there are a lot of boxes that need to be checked to host a major championship. It needs to be difficult enough. And quite frankly, that's just hard to achieve these days. Distance is a huge factor, and you run out of land. Land is a finite thing on this great planet that we're able to live on here. Simple, like, infrastructure capability, like when they go, they're going to bring it back, the U.S. Open. They're going to bring the U.S. Open to Marion, and they brought the PGA Championship to Belle Reve relatively recently. The reason I bring those two venues up is they're very tight. They're in, like, neighborhoods. There's not a ton of room, and that just makes it tricky. It was awesome at Belle Reve because it made the crowds seem, if you go into like a 10,000 seat college arena and there's only 2,000 people in there, it doesn't have that electric of an environment. If you go into a high school basketball gym and it only seats 500 and there's 500 people in there, it is like you're in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals or NBA. It's insane how awesome that environment is. And so that kind of effect was there at Belle Reve. But in general, you got to have, Bethpage has it, you got to have a huge amount of area for the commercialization of golf now, and the build-outs, the infrastructure, the hospitalities, the fan zones, the tens of thousands of people, if not more, that are going to be on site. Make sure they have a vantage point to see all of that. And then the accessibility to a big market is another huge one. It's sure that there are, like Shinnecock is a bit of a, comparatively, a remote venue in that there's only one road that goes in there. They have to do the train thing. It is 2.5, 3 hours, whatever it might be, from Manhattan, but they can kind of get away with saying it's near the tri-state area. And again, Pebble Beach, another one where it's like you have to go to Pebble Beach. So it doesn't matter where Pebble Beach is. It's still going to be Pebble Beach, going to draw folks in. But in general, they're trying to bring the biggest events near the biggest cities with a lot of, obviously, people, sports fans, all of it. And Charlotte is a reason that they go to Quail Hollow so frequently, and we kind of see it throughout. So checking all those boxes is not the easiest thing in the world. And when I sort of look at, Bethpage Black, it does check the box of, I was able to get from JFK Airport the other night out to the Bethpage area, in less than an hour. And if you're taking the train and all that, like it's pretty damn close to New York. It's been $70 or $75 for New York residents forever. It's got, anyone and everyone can find a way pretty easily to get on Bethpage Black and to do it without paying some of the rates that you play for okay golf courses in the winter here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And there's just not a ton of golf courses that check that box. And the USGA has, of course, kind of cornered Torrey Pines, which is the closest thing. I mean, Frankie and I, again, brought it up in the last show. It's the closest thing, I think, that you've kind of got to Bethpage Black. And when I look at the venues that the PGA of America can go to, they've got Kiowa. Kiowa is phenomenal. It is publicly accessible. It's a resort destination. You can go there. You can book it and play. It's expensive. I heard it's unbelievably difficult. I've never been there. Pete Dye, but it's in a beautiful part of the country. It's accessible, which I like. Quail Hollow, I got nothing against Quail Hollow. I've been there a handful of times. It is phenomenal. Would I like to see it host the PGA Championship and not other venues that we don't get to see particularly often? No, and we kind of made that point a lot when we were there in May for the PGA this year. Whistling Straits, phenomenal PGA Championship venue. Again, right in that same boat with Kiowa. In fact, it's unbelievably similar in that same architect. It's accessible. You could book a tee time, but you need to stay there. You need to do the whole thing as a resort. But that's no different than Pebble Beach. It's no different than Pinehurst. PGA Frisco, right? That's one of their go-to venues now. I love that place. We were just there. We filmed with the Dallas Stars there. It's really cool how it's going to perform as a major championship venue. It got, mixed reviews, I would say, when the women were there this year, how it performs and presents and all of that. For the men in a few years, Rory took a shot at it. It remains to be seen. But Valhalla, Tiger had the incredible moment there. Scotty got arrested there. It's got some history, but it's sort of in that Quail Hollow boat for me of like, it's a ritzy private club. There's plenty of ritzy private clubs that are hosting major championships and have throughout. I don't put them on the same level historically and whatnot, that it feels like they have to go there for the PGA Championship. I actually love Louisville. I think that place is awesome. Bourbon, the whole deal. Southern Hills, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But in terms of possible PGA Championship venues that I would like to see, that sort of like, and again, Bethpage Black got me hyped up about this. Erin Hills. I know they just had the U.S. Women's Open. I haven't heard that they're going to commit to having the men's U.S. Open there at Erin Hills. It was sort of lumped into that bucket with Chambers Bay of, people don't like change. They don't like to see something to them that doesn't look like a U.S. Open, which is why, we love Wingfoot's and we love Oakmont and we love these places that, like, when we see it aesthetically, yep, that's a U.S. Open. That's my dad's U.S. Open, my grandfather's U.S. Open, my U.S. Open. That's going to be my kid's U.S. Open. And we like to see that. And I think when people saw Erin Hills, Brooks Koepka won at like 17 under par. When they saw Chambers Bay and they're complaining about the greens and it wasn't tree lined with unbelievably thick rough, it was gigantic corridors, burned out, on Puget Sound and all that. They just kind of lumped those two courses into the same bucket of like, nope, that's not my U.S. Open. Well, guess what? It could be my PGA Championship. I would love to see the PGA of America add Erin Hills, add Chambers Bay. They did TBC Harding Park. That place, I loved it. It was a little hard to judge with the COVID situation. Morikawa won that one with that sick drive on 16, driving it on the green, making that 7-footer or whatever it was for Eagle, and then dropping the old Wanamaker. But point is, this kind of got my brain firing on venues and venue ideas when it comes to the PGA Championship, and I would love to see it go more in that direction. If you had a rotation of Bethpage Black, Kiowa Island, Whistling Straits, Chambers Bay, Erin Hills, PGA Frisco, I could really see that. I loved it at Southern Hills. That kind of is not in the bucket of what I'm talking about, but I thought that was a fantastic PGA. It's such a cool course. The Kilhance renovation and everything that they did there, and the finish with JT and Matthew Fitzpatrick right there, Zalatoris going into the playoff. I thought that place was awesome. So I'm just kind of fantasizing about a rotation that I would love to see when it comes to the PGA Championship. And I love the fact that Bethpage Black and the putter boy, that's Pinehurst, the Bethpage boy are on there. I just love the venue, man. I'm obsessed with it. It's got a lot of meaning on this show with Frankie and him literally getting married there, growing up playing there, and the whole history. But I love that spot. I've been blown away by it since the first time I stepped on property. And I'm very happy to see that the PGA of America made those announcements. A couple other things on my list here is the Ryder Cup. So every 2 years we do the Ryder Cup at Barstool. Try to get a lot of the biggest personalities at Barstool who are into golf, play golf, come together. This year we decided to go with the old format of me as a captain, Ryan Whitney as a captain. We're going to draft teams and see how it shakes out. Just a reminder that episode 4 and 5 came out this week. We got a bunch of alternate shot going on, and then we're moving into singles matches to try to close this thing out. 80 grand on the line / potentially 160 grand on the line because Dave kind of hoodwinked us a little bit in the negotiations at the beginning. But whichever team wins, it's 8 versus 8, gets $80,000. We get to pick myself or Whitney and our teammates. Whomever wins that picks that bet, and then whatever happens with that bet leads to how much money per person you get. So stakes are high, tensions are high. Kirk's in the mix, everybody's in the mix. Just a reminder to go out there and check that. The most recent episode had Frankie and Trent against Kirk and Keith Yandel, which is an all-timer. And then we got myself and Beef against Arian Foster and PFT. A couple folks saying there's a clip that looks like I don't know how to eat pizza. I do know how to eat pizza. You know, I would say that clip, pizza, that was like a meat lovers type pizza, and I love meat on my pizza. I love a little sausage, pepperoni. I think that one had a little bacon, maybe some ham on there too. You know, when you take your first bite of a new pizza, a new slice of pizza, you know, you grab it by the back. Maybe you do a little bit of the folded in type deal. and then you kind of just go for it. And when you do that on a meat lover style pizza, you don't know until you go for it if that meat on there, and everyone out there is going to know what I'm talking about, if that meat on there is pretty tightly sort of glued to the cheese and the sauce, or a lot of times it's quite loose. And, it looks like a rock slide, mud slide. Whenever you throw that thing up, gravity starts to factor in. That's sort of what happened. So I was going through that first bite, kind of a mystery, and it turns out all the stuff was kind of loose. So kind of a mess, but I do know how to eat pizza. Things I kind of chirped Arian Foster about fantasy points and all that. People are like, he's a great fantasy player. He's got a lot of things going for him that are just more impressive than the things that some of us have going for us. So you're just trying to take shots. And if you notice, that shot was taken towards a GoPro and with a microphone and standing next to Beef with Arian Foster nowhere near me. Again, he's a physical specimen. I'm just not. So you're trying to get some chirps in there. And, maybe that one didn't land. But regardless, if you've seen the clips, great. If you haven't watched the Ryder Cup, make sure you go check those out, because I think we got episodes 4 and 5 are out. Episode 6 coming out today as you're listening to this. So make sure you check it out. Dave, Big Cat, all the Chicklets guys, the Pardon My Take crew, a bunch of other big folks, little Sass from Barstool, Francis is out there, our crew, all of our crew are out there, and it was a blast. Great horse in Western Mass, phenomenal venue. So make sure you go check out those videos. And then a big thanks from me to everyone for the reaction to the Adidas announcement. It means a lot to us when people are excited and sending positive feedback on pretty much everything, but especially something like this. When you partner with somebody, that it's a big deal for them to attach their name to our name and our brand is a big move. There's contracts involved. There's internal conversations involved with their teams, from everyone, from high level, executives that are making sure this is the right decision, to younger, lower level new employees that are probably more in line and in tune with what we do. And everybody's got their points and their arguments and their reasons, and for it to come to the conclusion, yes, let's do this, for us to be like, yes, you guys are the right guys, you're Adidas. We obviously want to be with Adidas and the 3 stripes. And then to make the announcement, it's like everyone's kind of got their eyeballs on that, and they want to see how people react. And the reaction's been just overwhelmingly positive, and that's so cool to us and so meaningful to us that we can kind of we can really garner that reaction from people. And it does sort of remind me when I see it that our audience and you guys have such a vicarious relationship to us. Like when I say that, I guess I think like most of us that are fans of like Rory McIlroy, we don't live vicariously through Rory McIlroy. Like we can never envision us doing that ever. Like it's cool that he gets to do it. We like to witness him doing it, but like we could never really, truly, realistically see ourselves doing anything like that. I think that you guys all view us as, from our golf games to, you're like, I play golf pretty similarly to these guys, whether it's me or Frankie or Trent or Francis or Beef or one of the many people we've had in our sort of orbit forever. The way we talk about golf, I think you guys are like, yeah, it's kind of how me and my buddies talk about golf, either at the bar after a round, sitting on the couch watching the final round of a tournament, whatever it might be, in the group chat. And so I think that like it was a nice reminder as I see a lot of the feedback that I think a lot of you guys out there sort of feel like you're along for the ride, and that our deal with Adidas is your deal with Adidas, and that's 100% true, by the way. That's like how we view it, and just to see a lot of the reactions sort of reinforce that to me and to our whole crew. So just a huge thank you from all of us to all of you for, all the positive reaction and getting us to this point. We're able to partner with, I got this cool track. I got a tracksuit when we were out in Eugene at Adidas HQ, and I wore it immediately, obviously. And mainly I wore it because we were traveling that next day. But the barista at the coffee shop in the morning gave me a really nice, like, sick tracksuit, bro. And then I got another, I don't know if it quite got to 10. I would say like 6 to 9. Nice. Like compliments throughout the rest of the day, walking through the airport, the flight attendant, just a bunch of people. Sick tracksuit. That tracksuit's fire. I love the tracksuit. And you just kind of are reminded that like Adidas is everywhere, and Adidas is just cool. And to be able to rock the 3 stripes on the golf course, awesome. But wearing it everywhere is also just really, really cool. So yeah, it does mean kind of the world to us, and having a new partner, seeing all the Adidas stuff show up at my place is so sick. And I get so excited to open every single box and just see, is it a crew neck? Is it a couple polos? Is it like a pair of joggers? Is it a tracksuit? Is it a hat? Is it the trefoil logo or the old school 3 stripes? Like, what is it? What is it? I got to see it. I got to have it. I got to wear it. And it's cool. So yeah, all the support has been absolutely awesome. So again, big thank you from all of us to all of the fans supporting us. And we're so pumped to be Adidas athletes. That's just one of the coolest things that's ever happened. Another little piece of news. No Kapalua, which is a shame. Kapalua, Maui, and the droughts. They announced that the Sentry Tournament of Champions will not be at Kapalua coming up in January, as it always is. It's usually that first week after everybody gets back from New Year's, and you're sort of in that couple months of darkness in a lot of the parts of the country. And it's really, really nice, man, when the PGA Tour coverage throws it out to Maui and the whales and the views and the just all of it, man. That is it's a very warmly received broadcast and aesthetic in the living rooms of millions of golf fans around the world, and especially in the great US of A. And so to not be at Kapalua is such a shame. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do. It feels like, this is happening a little bit too frequently with the Riviera wasn't able to host with the LA fires. Obviously, what happened in Maui a few years ago with the fires, horrible. And so to see this event moving is not good, not something we want to see. But I imagine they got enough time. They can hopefully figure it out, find another venue, have a great event, and we still get to see whales and cool stuff in Hawaii that makes us feel better about the heart of winter that we're entering. I don't have to worry about that because I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's actually the best time of the year. It's going to be like 65 or 70 and sunny every day. So not overly worried about it for me, but I want you to know that selflessly, I'm worried about that for all of you. So hopefully they figure that out, find a great venue, and I love Tournament Champions, like 30, 40 people, all the winners from the last year. You get a pretty good amount of big names out there, and we sort of kick off the first of the year. So excited to kind of see what they end up doing with that, but a bit of a bummer with the whole with the drought, and obviously rooting for as much safety. Hopefully everybody's careful over there in Maui because that place is phenomenal. I love Hawaii. Who doesn't love Hawaii? All right. Without further ado, thank you for listening to me opine about a few things. Frankie and Trent are out filming with Brendan and a bunch of our crew. So you got myself and Shane Ryan are about to sit down. We're going to go deep into this Ryder Cup. And, I know it's been a lot of Ryder Cup hype, chatter, conjecture, predictions, all of that stuff. This is going to be different. This is, again, the author of as good of a book as someone can write about the Ryder Cup, and not just the Ryder Cup in its current form, but where it started, how it transitioned, what was important about getting it through that transition, and how it became what it is today. And then also deep knowledge of, what it has what has contributed to Ryder Cup victories, what has contributed to Ryder Cup defeats. It is one of the most interesting events when you zoom out from, 30,000 feet, because it's an event where the Americans are pretty much favored every year, or nearly every year that it's hosted, and yet have lost 8 of the last 11. So there's so much that goes into it, from debates over the years and reports of players wanting to be paid, kind of the American team's image of that versus the European team's image of, the necking that we talk about a lot on the pod, the hand necking, and the way that European men even and world-class athletes greet and hug one another, and how much that reflects Una Familia, which is the documentary series they did on Team Europe and all of that. It's just such a fascinating event that's all about to, come to a a defining moment next week at Bethpage, which again, I went deep into Bethpage in that venue, but Shane Ryan knows as much about this you could possibly know, so I'm extremely excited to chat with him about it. So without further ado, here is Shane Ryan, who is, again, the author of The Cup They Couldn't Lose, America, the Ryder Cup, and the Long Road to Whistling Straits. College football season is back, which means tailgates, cheering crowds, and the excitement of being in the stands before kickoff are all back as well. Game Time. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Barstool Sports. The Game Time app gives the advantage back to you, the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I'm looking right here, and I love this. I was able to just type in, Phoenix on there. And so if you are in your own city, if you're in a new city that you're visiting, whatever it might be, we got the Seahawks at the Cardinals. It's coming up next week. I got tickets Thursday Night Football for $50. And then you can scroll through and just look at all the different type of events from Benson Boone's coming to Glendale, Arizona at the old Desert Diamond Arena. I see tickets on here everywhere ranging from, I got $87 to something really, really, really nice sitting right up front, basically singing the songs yourself, $265. So again, make sure Game Time, you check them out. Fees are always included, so what you see is what you are going to pay. You can take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. I've been to an Auburn game. I've been to a Mizzou game. I've been to a Louisville game. I don't know, the college football. It's Saturday, so you still got the whole kind of weekend night, Saturday night afterwards. College football going to a game is just as good as it gets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Fore for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the R code FORE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. You don't need to sink a 30-foot putt to score big this weekend. Just fire up the good old DraftKings Sportsbook and take your shot at the green, the kind with dollar signs. Thank you, Scotty, from the last weekend. Huge for me, huge for me. Took my shot at the green. Scotty plus 150 on Sunday morning, I believe he was. I said, this guy's only 2 shots back. He's the best player maybe I've ever seen. He's probably going to win. He won, which was really nice. I was able to cash in on the DraftKings Sportsbook app doing that. Also, the Ghost Leg Parlay. You got to make sure you're paying attention to our promotions for this going into Sunday NFL football. But if you got to make sure you opt in, and then the Ghost Leg Parlay, I won my first week. I think I took a 4-team parlay. First 3 won. It would have mattered just on the value of the total payout, but I still would have won if my last one lost, because the Ghost Leg Parlay just takes, if you just lose one, it takes the one that you lose, turns it into a ghost. Turns into a ghost, and then adjusts the odds based on the ones that you did hit and pays you out as a winner. If you like to keep it simple, in terms of golf, you just pick somebody to win, but they also have live bets, prop plays, odds boosts, and plenty more. New customers, you're going to bet $5, and if your bet wins, you'll score $200 in bonus instantly. Bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Take your swing at winning some dough this week. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use code FORE, F-O-R-E. That is code FORE for new customers to get $200 of bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Okay, folks, I talked about it already. I kind of set this whole thing up a little bit, but we are joined for the first time by Shane Ryan. He wrote, a book that I've touted a bunch of times on this show, and you're sort of everywhere right now as like the Ryder Cup expert guy, I feel like.
Yeah, it's like a busy 1 week for me, and then it all falls off, and you won't hear from me again until 2 years later.
No, I feel like that's well done then. I feel like if you're going to decide to write a Ryder Cup book and then everyone every 2 years says like, oh, you're the guy that we need to have on every show, then that's mission accomplished.
Yeah, I'm happy. I think I told you when you originally shouted out the book. We watched the Amazon rankings go up. It was really nice. So no, it's awesome to be on here, and I appreciate you having me for sure.
One of my favorite parts of reading the entire book, you look at the title and you're sort of thinking like, oh, this is just going to be about Whistling Straits and sort of a lot of the hype and the hoopla. And I'm a big history guy. And so
Yeah.
I love that there's such a deep knowledge that you kind of consume when you read the book of the entire history of the Ryder Cup, the like evolution of the Ryder Cup, almost into like different species from when it started to what it is now. Like, what made you originally decide? Because there's so much on the Ryder Cup. What made you originally decide I'm going to write a book on the Ryder Cup?
Yeah, I think it's like when I was a kid, I loved the Ryder Cup, right? And I wasn't a big golfer as a kid or anything like that. But anytime the Ryder Cup came around, just hearing the bagpipes on the theme song just kind of got me really into it. And so it was always something that was in my head. And then Medina was the very first golf tournament I ever covered. And that was when I worked for Grantland, an old ESPN site. Just kind of begged them to send me there. And I still wasn't really a golf guy. I didn't even play golf at that time. And now I'm, a huge obsessive like everyone else. But Medina being the first one, that's insane, right? I mean, like that Sunday, I think remains the most exciting and dramatic sporting event I've ever been to, period, golf or otherwise. And so that kind of got me into the Ryder Cup. And then like you, I'm a history dude. I love especially military history. I love things like that. And so I had this idea of like, okay, I wrote my first golf book in 2014. It was like for my second one, I would love to write about the Ryder Cup. And I started looking into it and had no idea how rich the history was and what a cool story it was. And it's a normal history story, but it's also kind of like a military history. You having read the book, it's like a history of tactics. It's a history of evolution, of how do we beat this overwhelming opponent that we can't beat. And so all that stuff plays into it. And I just really dug the history and was like, okay, I think if I do this, I want the entire context. And the other reason was like, if you put all your eggs in one basket of just the Whistling Straits Ryder Cup, well, guess what? It could be 19-9, right? Which it was. And then you're like, oh shit, that's not a good book. That's kind of a boring book. And so the way I kind of wanted to do it was let's make it so that it's result proof, this book. So it'll be interesting because we'll talk about the history and we'll talk about all that. And it won't matter if, as happened, the Americans just completely dominated them and it wasn't really dramatic in any way.
Absolutely. And I think Alan Shipnuck does a great job of that, with his Live or Let Die book. And I combing through all of that, you learn, it's amazing. You're reading this, you're sort of sitting there thinking, okay, I'm pretty consumed like everyone with this existential crisis to the PGA Tour, and is John Rahm jumping and is Phil jumping, and that's interesting. And then you're like, oh, I'm 40 pages in and I'm reading about the history of Saudi Arabia and like like the leadership over there and the kingdom and all. You're like, whoa! But it does all tie together. So I love that aspect of it, and I think that it does such a good job when you understand the history of really like magnifying the crescendo once we do get to the tournament, because or the event, is because I think that when we all, a lot of the things in today's kind of society, sports especially, you almost feel like the hype is greater than the actual product. I think that the Ryder Cup sort of delivers. And I do think, we haven't had it's almost like it crescendos at times Friday morning and maybe like Saturday morning, because we haven't had Sunday come down as closely as it did at Medina. But I do think that the actual feeling when you turn on the Ryder Cup and you watch the intensity of the matches really does deliver for almost every minute of it. And it's so cool. Do you think that the Ryder Cup and the origins of the Ryder Cup and the folks that were involved with it for the first 10 years or so, do you think they'd be stunned at what the Ryder Cup is now?
Oh my God. It's crazy. I almost like 30 years ago, you would have been stunned. But yeah, if you go back to 1927 and, Samuel Ryder was like a seed merchant, right? He was like a grain guy. And it's just like, yeah, let's get some guys over. We'll play this match. A few 100,000 people will come watch or whatever. Is almost nobody at the course. It was just a very friendly thing. To see it now where, I don't know, how many people are they going to bring through Bethpage this week? Like 500,000 or something? It's like something insane. It might not be that many,
a massive number.
Yeah, totally. And the spectacle and how much money it makes and the fact that it's on TV. Yeah, it would have blown their minds. And again, though, I mean, what's cool about the Ryder Cup history is in 1985, this would have blown people's minds, right? It's like
Okay.
it has grown to such a degree. And again, I went over this in my book, but for 50 years, this was kind of a stagnant event where America won almost every time. And there are some good stories in there, but it almost died during World War II. And then I actually did a podcast for my Golf Digest podcast this week about in the early 80s, it was super, super close to dying because it felt like they had tried everything. At that point, they had brought all of Europe on board. They had new sponsors, and still the Americans were just taking them to the cleaners every single time. And you had people like Tom Weiskopf skipped one year because he wanted to go hunting. Like it was like, imagine that now. Imagine someone be like, I'm going to go hiking with my wife that weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's like this crazy stuff like that where it was almost dead. And in between 1981 and 1983, it really, really was on death's door and a few miracles happened. But yeah, to go from that to be like, I don't know if we're going to have a Ryder Cup in 1983 to where it is today, where it's this unbelievably massive event, I think it would shock people.
At what point do you think, if you are looking at it as a sort of like an evolving species, the Ryder Cup, at what point would you point to where like it became the species that it is today?
So I'll give you two. I think going back to that, 1981, it's all of Europe on board. The America goes to Europe. It's going to be the first home Ryder Cup for the Europeans at Walton Heath. And this American team is just unbelievable. They're just stacked and they kick the crap out of them. And and the main sponsor, who is this bank who had been sponsoring the Ryder Cup for like 20 years on the European side, they dropped out. And there's this dude who's the executive director of the European PGA, Colin Snape, who his job was to go find a new sponsor. And he spent a year doing this and couldn't do it. He had his best offer was cigarette coupons. Like that was how bad it was. This is after a year. And then all of a sudden he went to this meeting in Perth, Scotland, with this whiskey company, Bell's Scotch Whiskey, that I had never heard of, but I guess it's pretty big over there. And this guy was like, yeah, I want to sponsor it and I want to do it for £300,000 for the next 2 Ryder Cups, which was 4 times more than the previous sponsor. And so this guy who was like, couldn't get anything was like, okay, yeah, like that's a good deal. I'll say yes to that. And so that kept it going. But just as important was getting Tony Jacklin on board as a captain, who was this disgruntled guy who had been left off the team in 1981. And they came to him because the players said, we need someone younger, because this had been like a lifetime achievement award. So you'd have all these like old British guys who really nobody could relate to them. And the big thing with Europe was like, God, the Americans, they come on the Concorde. They've got the best clothes. I always laugh because you always hear about their wives. Like the American wives are so good looking. Like, this is something constantly like European players are like, their wives are so good. And so they always felt like second class citizens, like their shoes would be falling apart. Really, they'd have these like plastic shoes that they would give them that would fall apart on the second day. So it was like, we need someone younger who understands us and we need better stuff. And so Jacklin comes on board and he didn't really, he was kind of like, I'll do it, but only if you let us travel first class. Let us bring our caddies to America. Like you pay for it, all this kind of stuff. They said yes. And then he met with Seve Ballesteros, who had also been kept off that 81 team over this stupid fight over appearance fees. And Seve didn't want to play. And Jacklin eventually convinced him to play. And obviously Seve goes on to become this like legendary European figure. So that's when Europe started to take it seriously in 83. They go to America. They almost win. They do win in 85. And then they go to America. And for the first time in the 60 years of the Ryder Cup's existence, they win on American soil, which was this huge thing. Now, on the American side, what was really funny about that 87 one was the Americans had just got beaten 85 and the British were awful to them. Right? The British were like being good fans. They were heckling them. They were loud in support. I mean, I think
I respect it. I don't like it, but I respect it. I respect the British
exactly.
fan.
Yeah, you have to tip your cap, right? And like, so Hal Sutton came back going, I'm never going to that place again. I hate those people. And so they come in 87, which again ends up being the first time Europe has won, but the American fans don't get it yet. Like they don't understand what the Ryder Cup is. All they know is like the best players in the world are in America. And here's this fun golf exhibition at Jack Nicklaus's course. And
look at these American cute players, Europeans coming over. They're all dressed the same. Like, all right. Yeah, good for them.
Totally. Yeah, they're just like clapping for him. They're like, ooh, Seve's here. Like, that's going to be fun. Watch him.
Totally.
And so, but it's funny, the Americans had just experienced the hell, and they were like, we want our fans to go crazy. And so like Jack Nicklaus bought everybody like these little American flags, handing them out by the thousands. But the American fans just didn't get it. Like they weren't on board. And they lost, right? So then 89 comes, Europe ties. So then 1991, that's the moment for the Americans. Dave Stockton was the captain. It was the war by the shore. The Gulf War was happening. And he went like full on board. Like he had his guys wearing camo gear. It was this really patriotic deal. And for the first time, the American fans were like, okay, we're raring to go. Like the Europeans came over, they called their hotel in the middle of the night to mess with them. Like there was like pep rallies. I mean, it was the fans were loud. And that was sort of the start in America of understanding what the Ryder Cup is. And I also think the start of it becoming like the enormous thing that it is today.
Yeah, it is so interesting to think, it's not different from a lot of golf events, but almost any sport where if you go back to what are the biggest events now, that the origins of them would have never predicted, nor were they were they goal focused on it becoming what it is now. And like the Open Championship is a great example of
Yeah,
just
totally. Yeah.
whatever, a handful or a dozen guys trying to just figure it out over a day or two of like, hey, we all play at different clubs. What if we just see who could be the best player? And then they lose the trophy because Young Time Morris wins it 3 times in a row. And they're like, oh, we don't have a trophy. So the Open Championship just doesn't exist anymore. Like it was just that simple.
Yeah.
And you would, you wonder with the Masters tournament, even if you go back to like, I actually think they might have thought when they were creating it, they're like, oh, we're going to create one of the biggest events in golf. But it was what was it, like the Augusta Invitational, and then for it to see the spectacle that it is now, and they're announcing gigantic streaming deals and all of it. It's very it would be so cool to take Samuel Ryder and take some of the original key figures in developing the Ryder Cup and have them come see what it is now, because it's something we've talked about a bunch over the last month. But I think the Ryder Cup has exponentially grown on every level so much, which you've done such a good job of describing and going through all that history. But it's grown so much on so many exponential levels that from a commercialization, from a hype standpoint, from a controversy standpoint, from a unshackling of the fans standpoint, and like you just mentioned, where it's like not only are you as a golf fan sort of feeling like you're free to act differently than you usually act at a golf tournament, but historically you've been told to do that. Like it got to that point by, like you said, Jack Nicklaus and a lot of the American Ryder Cup fans being like, no, you need to be mean to these fucking people because they were mean to us. And like,
exactly. Yeah.
And it's almost like marching orders have been taken by the different fans at different places, that it's gotten me to think that, sure, the 2019 Masters or even the 2025 Masters or the Phil PGA at Kiowa, like these are maybe going to be as big of events from a golf history standpoint as I can ever remember. But in terms of the spectacle of this event, in terms of the commercialization, how readily available and how frequently all media pertaining to it is shown to us on social and in commercials and everywhere, I don't think that there's been a bigger event in the history of the game of golf than this Ryder Cup is going to be.
I totally agree with you. And it's funny because the thing you were saying before about, wouldn't it be cool to like show Samuel Ryder what this became? I was just thinking as you're saying that, and it's not something I've really thought of before, but go back to when the PGA Tour broke away from the PGA of America, and, they basically got everything they wanted, but they didn't take the Ryder Cup with them because they didn't think they needed to. So that's kind of like it's a funny alternate history thing, right? It's like if they had wanted the Ryder Cup, they could have so easily taken that from the PGA of America because it's their thing. Imagine the PGA Tour owning the Ryder Cup, right? And now looking back going, oh, shit. like damn, we could have had that. And the PGA of America just has it by luck.
Like that guy that sold 10% of Apple for like $800 or something. And like, you're just like, no, like, come on.
Yeah, it's like 2005 and I doubled my Bitcoin money. I'm going to sell. Right?
Yeah, 100%. You see those, you'd be like, oh no, that's worth like $1 trillion now. You're just like, oh my God. Yeah. So no, that is very interesting. Now that we fast forward right to this year's event, and Something that has like very much struck me over the 20 years now that I've been a big golf fan, right? I'm 38 years old. I got it. I played a little bit of golf as a young kid, started to play a ton of golf as like a teenager. My brother was playing a lot of golf. He was 4 years older than I was. So maybe when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, I started to get really into golf. Tiger was like in Tiger Mania and the whole thing. In my 20 or so years of being a gigantic golf fan, I feel like I have seen Team USA, Ryder Cup Team USA, have like 5 turning point type moments where
Yeah.
they do something, and it was, you could go back to like Hal Sutton putting Phil and Tiger together. You could go back to, what was it, Valhalla, and like the pod system. You could go to even like when they made the decision to go with Tom Watson, as that was sort of a bold, like, oh shit, they think that our new age, you know, next in line system is not working because we keep losing to this European team that's the underdogs, and so we're going to go with hard ass Tom Watson, and then you think the Phil like press conference and the task force that came out of that, and then they still get our asses kicked a couple years later when we go to Paris, and now it
Yeah.
almost felt
Yeah.
to me like when they made the Keegan announcement. This guy's under 40 years old. He hasn't even made the Ryder Cup in like a decade. It's not, he doesn't have the pedigree of all that. That almost felt like another, like, oh, we got to make a big splash and change in direction with what we're doing at the Ryder Cup USA. Were you like, did you, as someone that again is being touted all around now as the Ryder Cup expert, which you've earned,
Yeah.
when that announcement was kind of announced, were you like as stunned as everybody else? And do you also feel that same sense that I get, that it almost feels like we're reaching all the time if you're a Team USA kind of fan?
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. And the way I tried to put it diplomatically at the time, where it's like, there's nothing saying he can't be a good captain. It is
Totally.
just an insane move. It's an insane move. A guy who, forget not making the team, which, as you said, is a big deal in a decade or so, had never been a vice captain. And that had long been a point of wisdom on both the American and the European side for at least a decade of, it's good that these guys are vice captains because they can see how it goes. And by the time they take the helm, they're prepared for it and all that kind of stuff. But not only the Keegan thing was out of left field, it was also he could make the team, right? I mean, it was even back then,
Right.
I was like, what if he's a marginal captain's pick, which is exactly, Murphy's Law. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? It did happen.
I saw that tweet you put out, and that was perfect. You spot on. It's like the worst case scenario a year ago or a year and a half ago was that like Keegan's right around 10th in points or whatever.
Well, and like Riggs, this is the thing that blows my mind. Coming off of Rome, right? All the sympathy he had, the way he was depicted in full swing for not making the team. Can you imagine any captain, with Keegan being whatever he was, 11th, 10th? Can you imagine any captain leaving him off the team this year?
Nope. The only one would be Keegan Bradley.
Isn't that nuts? Like it's like a Greek god curse. It's like the only way you can be off the team is if we name you captain. Yep. It's so bizarre. So anyway, I thought you did the right thing, but yeah, I mean, going back, I think you nailed the points you said of like these turning points. You absolutely nailed it. Azinger was like this guy who was thinking outside the box for the first time. Then they forgot everything he did, and things kept going worse until you went to Glenn Eagles and this Tom Watson debacle, which led to the Phil thing, which led to the task force. But I actually thought, for the most part, the task force did a pretty good job implementing not only like captain chain of succession, but down to like the little logistical things of how do we make our guys the most comfortable? How do we make it so they're, ready to play? We're going to go to the course beforehand as a team, little things like that. So like little details to big details, they nailed it. They did really well. Obviously at Hazeltine, they did get their butts kicked in Paris, but then they did well again in Whistling Straits. Then they got their butts kicked in Rome. But they at least had, I thought, steadied the ship. And we had entered this era of what I think of as like the era of the home blowout, where the home team just keeps dominating. It doesn't matter who it is. The U.S. wins at home. Europe wins at home. So I thought they had done a lot of things right. And then they just completely threw it out with the Keegan thing. Now, I think maybe like some of the same logistics will stay steady. So maybe it's not a wholesale, like, get rid of everything, but it's like, man, he's never done it before. You don't know how he's going to do. It just seemed like such a weird risk to take and such a huge reaction to losing in Rome where, okay, yeah, you did get killed. Zach Johnson didn't come off well, but also all your guys were sick that week. Like everyone got sick.
Yeah.
I've heard rumors. I don't know if they're true. I've heard rumors that everybody had COVID that week. You know what I mean? So it's like all these things where it's like, you can react a lot to this Rome thing, which may have just been kind of a freak kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, meanwhile, Europe is obviously bringing back the same captain. They are bringing back 11 of the 12 players and the twin brother of the 12. So they're going to kind of put it to the test of can a road team actually win the Ryder Cup anymore? So I think, you alluded to it before. Not only is it going to be the biggest event, I think this is like the most fascinating Ryder Cup we've seen in some time. I can't wait to be there.
Yeah, I can't either. It is it's such a hard thing to judge and put confident belief in that X factor produced Y result because of the small sample size, and totally, so that's it is, you want to panic because there's so much eyeballs on it. There's so much diehard fandom around one side or the other, which there typically isn't in the game of golf. Any fandom, sure, there's fan favorites out there, but it's spread among everyone in the field, and we're all just kind of clapping and rooting for good golf at the end of the day. Whereas in this,
nobody gets rooted against, right? Like that's,
no,
yeah,
never. And in this, it's like if our team loses, it's the same. It's football mentality. It's New York sports radio mentality of like, if your team loses, you're pissed and you demand change, you demand answers. And and Patrick Cantlay, I think, did actually put it pretty well, where he's like, if you really just look at the numbers, like, okay, there, I think, and this might have been another tweet of yours, but somebody recently, I think it was you, that was like, out of the home teams winning so dominantly over the last couple decades, it's really actually 55% of the matches have been won by the home team and 45% of them have been won by the away team. So it's like really a very narrow split. And if you're looking at like a baseball season that's 162 games, and it's like, that's a large sample size. You have a pretty goddamn good idea of like what your team is and what your team isn't and why that's the case. After that large of a sample size, when you're looking at like, no, these guys, like the American players, for the most part, they've played in like 2 or 3 of these Ryder Cups ever. And that's like 6 or 9 matches for a lot of them, or 12, 15 matches over the last 6 years if they've been relevant, 10 years if they've been around for a little longer, 15 years. That's nothing. That's every 2 years. And they could have a sickness one year. They could have poor form because they're going through a swing change that they decided to implement at the end of August, and the event was at the end of September, and they're trying to get ready for the Masters that's in 8 months. So all those factors in are so makes it so hard to judge. And so I'm with you, and that I would like, I think I'm of the belief more so that I think Keegan's going to turn out to be a great captain, but I still think it was such a shocking move at the time, and it was a departure from sort of the result of that task force, which was like, no, we're going to implement this successor type system of like, you're in there for at least a Ryder Cup, maybe 2 Ryder Cups as a vice captain. You learn the ropes, you learn all that goes into captain's picks, you learn all that goes into pairings, you learn all that goes into course setup, you learn all that goes into all of the extracurriculars and how do we make sure the players are comfortable, their wives and families are comfortable, but also still focused on the golf. Like, all of that is such a big part of the spectacle that to have a departure from that is objectively a shocking move, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong move,
Totally. Yeah. And it might be the right guy to do it with. Right. I mean, that's, again, I'm kind of believe if it works out, it's like almost an accident, right? I mean, there's nothing to say it would work out. But Keegan is a smart guy, so maybe that's not totally fair. But I do agree with you. I think what he's been doing, and especially recently, the way he's been talking, you're like, that sounds like a good captain to me. It doesn't sound like he's doing anything wrong. It sounds like he's giving them every chance to win. And I was impressed. I mean, it sucked for him, but I was impressed that he left himself off the team. I think anything else would have been just like a weird like distraction and narrative to come out of it. But yeah, I think the point you made is a really good one. And it's hard because it's such a big event. We talked about how big it is, that it is like WFAN every time after it. It's right. There's so much analysis. There's so much about it. And there are patterns, right? There are legitimate patterns where it's like for 5 Ryder Cups in a row, the home team has won in a blowout. And you look at that and go, that seems kind of like definitive. But when you drill down to the sample size, it's so small. And you're like, yeah, did we just flip a coin heads 5 times in a row? Is that all this is? Is it going to
right.
normalize after this? And then there are other things. Like, I've always been a guy where I'm like, the size of the crowd now and the intensity of the crowd, both here and in Europe, that's got to be a huge factor because these golfers aren't used to playing, as you said, they're not used to playing road matches. They have no chance to acclimate to it because it only happens once every 2 years. So I've been on that train, but then even I have to look and go, well, here's a weird thing. If you look at the stats in the last 6 Ryder Cups, the percentage of the home team in 4-ball and singles has been 52%. So almost like half and half. And then in alternate shot and foursomes, it's been 76%. And so you go, wow, what is that? How does that make sense? And we actually just finished producing a whole video on it. And the conclusion is, I don't know, like there's nothing that makes sense about it. There's nothing like, and I talked to like Jason Aquino, who's the head of Scouts Consulting, who does like the U.S. Ryder Cup stuff. I talked to Justin Ray, who, as you know, is like as brilliant a stats mind as you can get.
Love
both
Jay
these
Ray,
guys are like,
the man.
Yeah, totally. And they're both like, well, the home and the away team both have the same opportunities. Nobody knows the tees or pins ahead of time. There's no advantage like that. There's no reason why it should be so lopsided in this one format. And when you think about it, it's crazy. Like, right, in Rome, it was 4-0 right away. That was foursomes. Yep. If you go back to the to Whistling Straits, it was 3-1 right away. In Paris, the U.S. actually took a 3-1 lead in 4-ball. And then in the foursome session in the afternoon, Europe won 4-0. So over and over, it's these crazy swings with the home team winning foursomes. And again, like we talk about how hard it is to analyze, I don't know why that happens, or if we should expect it to continue happening, or if it's just some weird statistical noise that's now gone on for a decade. But again, you wouldn't, if you were flipping a coin 300 times, you wouldn't blink an eye if you did heads 5 times in a row, right? So in the greater context of hundreds of years of the Ryder Cup, maybe it's not that crazy. It's so fascinating, and that's kind of what makes it so fun to argue about, is because you can never prove your point, no matter how much you think you know. It's cool.
So are they going, once again, are they leading with alternate shot in the morning and then 4-ball in the afternoon?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because one of the mysteries of the Ryder Cup for me for a long time was always in the US it was foursomes, it was alt shot first, and always in Europe it was 4-ball first. And then they got to Rome, and I in my head I'm like, there's got to be this complicated reason for it. There's got to be something. And then in Rome, Luke Donald was like, hey, if we're so good at this format, why don't we do it first? And they did. And they won 4-0. So there was no mysterious reason.
He's just looking and he's like, has anybody ever suggested this? And they're like, yeah, no, that's a good idea. He's like, I will do that.
Yeah, why not? And it worked perfectly. So yeah, it's like, I think now we're probably pretty static where I have to imagine it's always going to be that until someone proves otherwise, right? Until the away team actually wins one of those sessions.
We've been incredibly excited this week to announce Adidas is the official golf apparel and golf footwear partner of Fore. Our partnership fuses Adidas high performance and versatile gear with our laid back, entertaining golf culture is what we're going to call it. Adidas leads with products and partnerships that represent golf's growing culture, which is what we love about it. I'm wearing this tracksuit right now, but they sent me all kinds of cool stuff here at Adidas, and we've been rocking good Adidas stuff. I bought some Adidas maybe 2 months ago. I'm showing shoes right now. The point is, and I spoke about it off the top, but the point is the Adidas partnership is something that just means the world to us, and something that they focus on. We've gone to a couple dinners now with the folks from the Adidas golf team over there, and hearing them talk about, like, they're so focused on connecting, obviously, the performance. You want to be able to swing golf's a sport with style, with making the game more accessible, with inspiring the next generation of players on and off the course to realize that golf is cool, golf fashion is cool, golf apparel is cool. These shoes are cool. Okay, these are just really cool. These are Tour 360s. They've got the Ultra Boost. Look at this thing. This thing is just as comfortable as it gets. So Adidas does it right, and for us to be with them, along with Colin Morikawa, Ludwig Oberg, Rose Zhang, Lynn Grant, Adidas gear is designed to perform at the highest level for golfers everywhere, whether you're chasing wins or you're new to the game. Once again, Adidas is the official golf apparel and footwear partner of Fore. And guess what? It could be yours too. Whether you're chasing birdies or at the 19th hole, Adidas gear is made to perform while you keep you comfortable and confident wherever you play. So make sure you go check them out at adidas.com/golf. Once again, that is adidas.com/golf. This episode is brought to you by Brex. Any finance folks listening out there? Well, guess what? We found something you'll love as much as the excitement of golf's major championships. Meet Brex. It's an intelligent finance platform built to give you both control and speed. With a corporate card, banking, expenses, and travel all in one single place, Brex ensures that the best companies can manage company spend, automate expenses, and get every dollar to the right place. We've been using Brex, okay? It's earned the trust of 30,000 companies, including us right here at Barstool Sports. The expense feature, I can't tell you how much time that saved. And now I can only imagine if you utilize that for all of the other features as well, right? That's the one that like we use. But there are many folks here at Barstool Sports on the back end that must just be thrilled about Brex. They have to be thrilled about Brex because if our small little touch point of just expenses is that much better, then Brex across the board has to just be making everything financially so much more efficient at Barstool. So a huge thanks to them coming on board. Barstool, again, we use Brex's corporate card expense management software, helps manage employee spending. It's been massive for us. So make sure you learn more at brex.com/grow. Again, that is Brex, BREX.com/grow. The captains are always so much like debated, and like in anything, like in any sport, and they probably can get too much blame when it goes poorly, probably a little bit too much credit when it goes well, and it depends on the sport, right? I think we all agree like a coach in football has a much larger impact on the game than probably a coach in hockey, right? You're kind of just running the lines for the most part. I mean, coaches obviously do a lot, but once the game gets going, I thought Keegan's decision to not play because the captaincy is kind of so important and your focus needs to be so important, I thought really put an emphasis on if you have this debate forever, which I feel like we have had, which is like, is the captain important or is the captain just a lifetime achievement award? And it really just comes down to like the other team hit better shots than our team. What the hell does it have to do with the captain? The Keegan kind of decision not to put himself on the team, I think was widely accepted by everyone. It's like, oh, that's the right move because being a good captain is so important. So do you think that we've reached the point with this spectacle, with this event, that the captain really is that important? And do you believe like the captain truly can and often does dictate the result of the Ryder Cup?
Yeah, I'm someone who really believes they're important, and it's a big part of the book, as you read, that it has been in the history of the Ryder Cup a really important thing to have not only a captain who knows what he's doing, but a system in place where new captains can step into it and know exactly what they're doing. That's why starting in '83 and really going through like 2006, Europe pretty much dominated the event. They won, I think, 2/3 of the Ryder Cups because they had this template in place where everybody could step into it, and then the U.S. started building that slowly, but eventually steadily once Paul Azinger took over. I think captains are really important, but it also comes back to the thing we just talked about of how do you prove it? And that becomes really difficult because you can point to a bunch of things they did, like, look what they did, but it's hard to ever say, you can't draw a straight line from him doing this thing and having his guys be prepared and comfortable and setting a course up this way. You can't necessarily draw a straight line from there to saying this is how it affected the results on the course. Maybe the closest thing you could have was Bjorn having like really tight fairways with heavy rough in Paris, and then the U.S. bombers were just miserable the whole time. Like that might be the most like blatant example of, okay, well, here's a course setup decision he made that seemed to pay huge dividends. But like today on the Golf Channel, Eamon Lynch was saying, well, the away captains the last 5 times have been worse. And you're like, yeah, it kind of makes sense where you're like, obviously Tom Watson was terrible, right? Like, but then you're like Darren Clark, nobody had anything good to say about him. Padraig Harrington took criticism. Jim Furyk took some criticism. And Zach Johnson obviously took criticism. All these away
It
captains.
is tricky though. Like, is that a function of losing, or is that, or is that,
Exactly.
yeah,
No, but
right.
it's like if you did, let's say you subscribe to the belief that it's impossible to win on the road because the fans are too rowdy and it intimidates all the players. Then, just like you said, you're kind of retrofitting a story of look how bad the road captains have been. When it's like, no, like they might not be that bad. It might just be really, really freaking hard to win on the road. And so, yeah, it's all that being said, I do think this is a team sport, right? This is a team sport masquerading as an individual sport. Golf is an individual sport. But when it comes to the Ryder Cup, it's a team sport. And I think any team sport, it is just like scripture that good leadership matters. And I don't think that's any different in the Ryder Cup. And I do think historically you can kind of trace that. You can say, obviously, we have examples of these really, really good leaders and some really bad ones, and the results have pretty much followed.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest takeaways from your book, was how you had really laid out the case of how much captains truly do matter in the Ryder Cup, and especially as it's gotten closer from a competitive standpoint and a bigger overall event, that managing everything and now factoring in all of the data and all of the course setup and all of it, kind of, is really the point that you were making leading up to Whistling Straits. Do you look at that like Steve Stricker, man, like going into that, and you describe a lot of this very well. He's a quiet guy, so it was sort of unknown, I guess, what the process like. It wasn't
Right.
as transparent as whereas like Keegan is obviously a much. He's kind of a louder, he's a rah-rah type guy. He's had people know about the suitcase and the backpack for a long time. He has the clip from the President's Cup last year where he's like, now we're going to fucking go kill he's just that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Steve Stricker's not that kind of guy. After watching the way that whole thing unfolded, after reading sort of you describe and even since then react to like the way that it went down, was that pretty much the example of how to be a Ryder Cup captain in today's modern age?
I think so, yeah, and I think especially for the Americans, and there's a little bit of a difference there. So one interesting thing, going back to Azinger, and I'll try to put this as quickly as I can, but he had been playing the Ryder Cup his whole career and losing, and what he didn't like was the idea of like, oh yeah, you've all got to come together as a team now, right? All these guys you compete with, now you've all got to be best friends for a weekend. Like he called it like kumbaya type stuff. He didn't like that, and so his big idea was, what if we take basically like good friends and put them together and said, don't worry about getting along with 12 other people. Just get along with these three guys. And that was the philosophy behind the pod system. So it was kind of like making it more selfish, right? Or making it more like normal golf, more self-involved, less asked of you from a team front. Stricker was the same deal. Stricker was just like, I want you guys to feel like it's an ordinary weekend. We'll go to dinner once or twice, but it's not going to be a big thing. COVID actually gave them a big pass on that. Like they had to do less of the balls and the galas and everything. They had to meet with fans fewer times and stuff like that. But he was kind of like, I'm not going to give you a rah-rah speech. In fact, there's a funny story. I think Davis Love told me that the one time he tried to give them a pump-up speech at Whistling Straits, he started crying like instantly. like his emotions just overwhelmed him. And they're like, Steve, don't even bother. Don't even try it. And he was like, all right, fine. Just go play well. But no, it was more like, we're going to make sure, like, if you nap during the day, we're going to make sure you can nap during the day. If you work out every morning right before you play, we have a gym here, so we're going to do that. Do you like to eat bananas? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, even down to the small logistical stuff, they were on top of it, but it was all that. It was no spiritual anything. It was just like, let's get you guys ready to play, and then we trust you. And I think, professional golfers. I mean, they're so self-contained, and they are such creatures of habit that's what they like. And I think especially Americans. Now, on the European side, would that have worked? Maybe, but I do think they're more into like hype videos and, you see like even at Whistling Straits when they lost, they were all in the press conference afterward crying, saying it was the best weekend of their lives, how much it means to them to be together. That you don't get that on the American side. The Europeans do have more of that unity. And my theory is I think it all stems from having this juggernaut, the USA, to play for the last 70, 80 years, right? The US has always been the best at golf. Yeah, common enemy. by the time the Ryder Cup started in the 20s, the U.S. was far and away the best golf country. And so there's always that target. And the U.S. doesn't look at Europe that same way, right? They're not like, oh, I want to beat the Germans or like even the British. We have a
It's
sort
like
of
everybody gets up to
arrogance
play the
about us.
Kansas City Chiefs, right? Or everybody got up to play the New England Patriots for 20 years.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it's like. And so Europe does have that. So I think on their side, probably they do benefit more from the little videos they circulate with Sam Torrance and Olazabal talking about Seve, you know, all that kind of stuff. They like that more. But yeah, on the American side, it's just like, let's take care of every little need these guys have and let them go from there.
So I got to ask you on players and picking players. If you know, obviously right now we do 6 and 6, right? 6 people automatically qualify, 6 people get chosen as captain's picks. If you were picking in a team from all 12, where like it's totally up to you, all the criteria, I've kind of boiled it down to like 5 different characteristics. And I'd be very curious for you how you would weight or go percentage wise on the characteristics. I would say recent form, sort of the 2-year point, right? Accruing of like where are they at in the point system, course match or like data golf, right? Type ranking or where players are at, experience, which, you know, as obviously everybody kind of understands, I think what experience is and team events and all that. And then the last one I would put just kind of like intangibles. And that's like, oh, this guy has a great match play record, or he's a bulldog, or he's like a great team room guy.
Yeah,
how
people
would
like
you
him.
Sort of, yeah, right. From, again, recent form, the point system over the last 2 years, course match, data, experience, and then those sort of intangibles. No,
that's a great question. And we're talking just captain's picks, right? We're talking below the top 6
picks. And because again, you could argue like, okay, at one point there were 8 captains, or there were 8 automatic qualifiers, right? There were like 9, there were 6. There's been a bunch of different options.
It's been everywhere.
Yeah. So just in terms of like, picking players, captains picks. And the reason I kind of started it with like, if you could just start your slate clean.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, however you want to go about that part of it. But yeah, if you're just picking your team, how do you think historically all of those different factors? Because in my opinion, I almost like think some people would just be like, you should just pick your team 2 weeks before the tournament off recent form. Like, why would you do anything else?
Yeah, no, that's a fun exercise. So I think the least important to me would be the 2-year points data set, right? That's sort of like,
which is like the number one that they go off of for the top 6 people, right?
Well, for the top 6, and that's fair. Like, you do have to have, at some point, you have to say like people can earn their way on the team, right? I mean, like, there's guys. Otherwise, you would just pick the same people every time, and that would be kind of boring. But no, so for that, but I'm talking about for captain's picks, I would put that last.
Okay.
What's crazy about it is stats show that recent form is not that important. Now, you don't want a guy who's terrible, right? If somebody's obviously out of it, like if they're really playing poorly, that's a different thing. But what you don't want to do is go, oh, this guy just won a week before. Like, he's going to be super red hot. So that, I think, would be 4th for me. Course fit is huge. People have picked on that. Scotty Scheffler was a course fit pick at Whistling Straits, and you know that turned out really well. He beat Rahm in singles. He played well with Bryson, and of course, he was on the verge.
It's a great point. Is that true? That was like the big. See, I can't remember back that far. That was like the big sticking point on Scotty, was that he was like the perfect course, because he wasn't Scotty Scheffler yet, obviously.
Yeah, he was a great course fit. Kisner, I didn't remember. Like, Kisner was like really in the mix, and Kisner, I think, won the Wyndham that year, a couple weeks before the Ryder Cup.
Oh yeah, I had to root for Europe that year because I drunkenly tweeted that if Kiz didn't get picked for the Ryder Cup team, I would root for Team Europe.
I was the same thing. Like, so here I was like, this guy is unbelievable at match play, Kisner. He's been great forever at match play. Give him a chance. I mean, this guy's a dog. He's in good form. I thought it was crazy, but clearly Scotty Scheffler had big things coming, and it panned out that,
it did.
So course fit's good. And then the experience, I think, is really key, knowing what the Ryder Cup is all about. And I want to emphasize, though, positive experience. And so this is why I had no problem with Justin Thomas being chosen in Rome. It's like, the guy is the greatest match play player as an American of his generation. He's got a phenomenal record. You can team him with just about everyone. He really cares. I thought, if he gives you any reason to take him, take him. I think the same about Cantley this year, where I'm like, anything at all, any little sign of life this guy shows, he's got to be on the team. Because think of the moments, Cantley, like, with Rory in Rome, at Montreal last year. Cantley is always doing something pretty cool in the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup.
Yep.
Then the intangibles thing, for me, it's just like you can't have a guy everybody hates. Like
Yep.
little intangibles I would classify as not important. But if there's somebody who's going to be a clubhouse cancer, probably it's a better idea not to put them on the team. But I think for me, course fit and experience at the Ryder Cup are my like really, really big ones.
Yeah, it's incredible how I guess the course fit part of it doesn't probably get talked to in tight golf circles. It does, but I think generally with like all my friends, my group chat, it's very rarely talked about. And I think it's one or two layers deeper that you have to go to fully like look at or understand the course fit, because it's like golf. No, golf's just golf. Like, why are they best? But you really do learn that, people, players, and the elements of their game that are their best qualities, worst qualities, and how those match up the golf courses historically through their careers, venues, tournaments that they play at, all of that historically with all data are actually so unbelievably important. And so it would make sense how much, and I that was the biggest argument that people had against me at the time, where they were like, and I think the Kisner part from Whistling Straits, where people were essentially like, no, the time to have picked Kisner was actually in Paris, where it was like
100%.
hit fairways, hit it straight.
Yeah.
They were like, we love
he would have been great in Paris. Yeah.
He would have been the best player on either team. He was made for the Paris Ryder Cup.
Totally.
And they kind of knew that. And they were like, Whistling Straits, unfortunately, just is not the spot for him. And it's hard to argue with like that historic of a victory. So now going into Bethpage this year, Bethpage has the reputation. It's a big, ballpark. It is in a lot of ways. I know it's now PGA of America owns it, which I started this whole show talking about how much I love that, how much I think Bethpage Black is what I think the PGA of America should bring the PGA Championships identity closer towards. Like, they got to find one.
Yeah.
I love Bethpage Black, but I do think from if you had to put it in a category in as short of words as possible to explain it to someone that doesn't understand it at all, it is a U.S. Open type golf course traditionally. It's just like long, narrow fairways, long rough, hard to hit the greens, and all of that. Yet you get to set it up however you want. From all the data, from your knowledge of the Ryder Cup, from USA team strengths versus Europe strengths, how do you think they decided to set this thing up for next week?
It'll be interesting to see, because if you look at the data golf, and I love having a thing like data golf where you can see actual stats of course fit. It makes it easier, because before that it's kind of guesswork. You're sort of going on faith of, oh, it's a bomber's course, or it's it's a tight course or whatever. A little bit of eye test. But you look at data golf and the guys who are have the most like perceived gain because of the course: Bryson, Rory. I mean, the guys you'd expect who can hit the crap out of the ball. And the interesting question is the wisdom has always been, okay, the U.S. is going to mow everything in sight, right? And the Europe is going to keep the fairway is going to be 10 yards wide and the rough is going to be 7 feet high, right? This is kind of the thing. The U.S. wants a cow pasture and Europe wants like the most narrow thing you could ever imagine. Hazeltine was kind of like that. Paris fit into that. But then you go to Whistling Straits and the Europeans are so excited because they're like, this is kind of a linksy looking course. There's not much you can do. Like, it's not like Hazeltine where you can take down trees and mow everything so that there's essentially no rough. This is kind of like our style of course, and it didn't really matter. And then if you look at the data from both teams, these players are not that different anymore, right? There may have been some average American player versus some average European player in the past. I think they're all kind of the same now. I don't think, and again, if you look at data golf, it's like the U.S. is expected to be 0.05 strokes better per round. It's essentially dead even. And it's also dead even in each style, like driving, approach, putting. So I think you can kind of overanalyze that a little bit, but I still am going to be fascinated to see, is the U.S. going to take the rough down, right? Because Bethpage, as you said, it's a U.S. Open course. Nasty rough is part of that whole deal. So are they going to take that down? Do they think they benefit from guys like Bryson being able to launch it without any penalty? I have no idea. But I don't think the difference is as much as maybe it used to be, or as much as some people think.
Yeah. Are you surprised that the U.S. is as favored as they are? I think they're minus 150 to plus 150.
I think so. I think if you're Vegas and you look at what's happened with the home teams, you just have to. You know what I mean? I think they're going to win. I'm of the mind now. I talked myself in Rome. I talked myself into the U.S. having this. I was going to be close, but the U.S. is going to win. And I wrote this whole thing for Digest.
So did
Yeah.
I. And I remember, dude, going into that. It's hard to look at now because it's just not as much of a talking point, but it was so much like Liv ruined the European team at the
Oh,
time. And it
totally.
was like there's a
Yeah.
handful of players and they had to change the captain. And it was like, how are they even going to compete? And they kicked our ass.
Yeah. They did. And I was like, well, Zach Johnson is a system captain. You know, he's been in it. He's seen how it is. They've got players with experience. They've done all the right things leading up. They all went to, they knew the course a little bit. And yeah, my lesson from that, basically, I was completely wrong, obviously. I was wrong within 3 hours. Within 3 hours, I was like, oh, well, it's just another home blowout. And so now it's like, until proven otherwise, I'm going to pick the home team. And I think it is a massive advantage. Now, we've already talked about how that might be analyzing the wrong things, or it might be small sample size. But especially, I think if you're making the odds, it's like, how do you not favor the home team at this point?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Classic rookie mistake, not going to Sport Clips haircuts. Guys come in looking like they've just been sacked by a 250-pound linebacker, but walking out looking like a first-round pick. That's Sport Clips, baby. Sport Clips stylists have the playbook for a clean cut. They have mastered the X's and O's of men's hair, and with the MVP haircut experience, which is what I love, which is what Trent loves, they're going to get you something that's really special, which is the hot towel. The hot steam towel experience when you're getting a haircut at Sport Clips, combined with they do a massaging shampoo, right? They tilt you back. They put your neck in that little semicircle deal. Make sure you're all cozy, right? You shimmy in there. And then they just massage shampoo your head. And then they give you the precision cut. It's the whole 9 yards. You got to check out the MVP experience. When you step into Sport Clips, you're walking into a zone for guys. The games are on. Stylists simply get it. It's a place designed for guys to win and then walk out with a haircut ready for the highlight reel. Sport Clips, it's a game changer. I know I've kept you for a long time, but in terms of the European team, and
I could
basically
Ryder Cup, talking Ryder Cup, man, I could go all day.
I know. I'm the same way. It's all, I love it. I live for it. Are you them running it back? I think, again, I saw this is the most similar or same team that there's ever been in the history of the Ryder Cup. It's basically the exact same 12 people from a DNA standpoint. It literally is the exact same 12 people. Yeah. It's the same captain. I don't know about all the assistant captains, but I would imagine it's basically the same assistant captains. They've got Molinari out there on the statistics. The whole thing that went into Rome is this: they're running it back with basically the same exact team operation, everything. And I think they're better now. I think, if anything, like those handful of players that were unproven, that were unknown going in. We talked about the Liv split. So Ludwig was like basically out of high school, it feels like, when they did the Rome Ryder Cup. Now he's got wins under his belt. He's a megastar in the game. Adidas athlete, by the way. And so just seeing that team and the fact that they're running it back, does that give you even like more confidence in a team, or more confidence than it would otherwise, that they basically have the same group?
Yeah, I think it gives them a great shot. And I hope, for the sake of the Ryder Cup, that this is at least close. And it would be probably good for the Ryder Cup if you had a visiting team winning, just to show that it can still be done. That's what I've wanted for a while. Now, you talked before, it's funny how the Ryder Cup manages to deliver even when it's a blowout. Like in Rome, you had the Cantley and the Rory stuff, and Rory yelling at both.
Awesome.
There's always something insanely dramatic happening. And it's fun. It's totally fun. Think how fun it would be if it came down to the last 2 or 3 matches. 1983, starting in 83, going to 99, the Brookline, the U.S. comeback. Something like, I don't know how many Ryder Cups there were, but there must have been like almost 10. Almost all of them, I think, except one, finished with a 1-point difference. So that would have been awesome. Wouldn't that have been awesome to be like a fan then? I mean, I remember Brookline, and I remember a couple before, but I mean, I don't remember the War by the Shore or anything like that. No. So it's like, that to me is the golden age, and I want that back. I want to see them play a close match. And, I've written this before, and I think we may have said it before already. This is the European team to do it. If anybody can do it, it's this team. They're tried and true. Like you said, right down to the stats guy. They've got the same people back. So yeah, I hope it's close. I hope they put up a fight, and I hope it doesn't just leave us with the conclusion that, I guess the Ryder Cup is just about, the fans are scary and everybody, nobody can play in a hostile environment and it's always a blowout. I hope that's not what happens.
Yeah, I think that the only Ryder Cup in my like golf viewing lifetime that was close was Medina.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
And I guess I would say that there were moments, like in at Hazeltine, the Phil versus Sergio match and the Rory versus Reed match,
Rory
like
and Reed was
those
amazing. Yeah.
those were moments where those sort of went our way. What Phil and Sergio tied with those birdies in the last hole.
Didn't they
And
each shoot
then
like 62 or something crazy?
yeah, they
Like
shot
that
like
was,
zero. Yeah,
yeah, it
exactly.
was amazing. Yeah.
And I think and Patrick Reed got that done. So it ended up like we had the lead going in and it ended up in our favor. But that actually had the juice earlier in the day. And each one has had some juice earlier in the day. We need one with the juice late in the day. We need one where everyone's starting to do the math. You do the flags a little bit. You're starting to be like, oh God, this is going to come down. Like we have to flip that match. And if we do, we can win by one. Holy shit. Like I think we need that. And I do feel like the build up, the fact that there's so much symmetry to it. There's so much of Rory had the unbelievable beginning of the year and like capped off probably the best year of his career. Scotty had the unbelievable middle end of the year, like supplanting or kind of putting his flag in yet again as like the guy, but like the two of them as the leaders of their team. They're 1 and 2 in the world. And then like almost every layer below that has a similar storyline. Europe's running their entire team back. The U.S. has phenomenal players. We've got some emerging stars that have won some majors. It's just like it's at a venue that is basically as good as you can get for being like the biggest city in America, like in the middle of the biggest city of America. It's where the average person can go play. It's like all of it coming together. It feels like this, like it feels to me like this is the one where we're going to get some moments on Sunday that we just haven't had in a while.
I think you're right, and I hope you're right. It's funny. I got like goosebumps as you were talking about it because when you think about it, it's like I'm excited for it, but then you forget what it's going to be like to be there like Thursday night and the lineups come out, the first lineups, and you're like, what if Rory and Scotty are both in the first group, right? I mean, you could have them going against each other. I mean, it always feels like Rahm and Scotty are constantly playing in the last two Ryder Cups. What if they meet in singles again? I mean, the possibilities are just. Yeah, they are just like titillating, right? Like it's gonna be awesome. And it's like all I want is for the hype to the hype usually delivers in one way or another, but I want it to deliver in a close match this time. That's what I really, really want. I want it, like you said, I want 5:30 on Sunday for nobody to know who's gonna win this thing. And it's gonna come down to, can somebody bury a big shot? Does somebody choke on a chip or something like that? That's what it's all about. And we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it in a decade. I think we're due. We deserve it. You and me, Riggs, we deserve to have that moment.
I'm with you. And it is one of those, like, you're right, where the end has, as we get to 5, 6, 7 o'clock, I guess 4, 5 o'clock, it becomes like we've always seen that this team needs this, and this to happen to have a chance. It hasn't been that moment from like watching at Medina when those guys are standing on the 17th tee, and it was like Justin Rose and like Jim Furyk or Steve Stricker or something like that, where it's like when they're standing on the tee, it's like, no, if he hits a good tee shot right here on this 17th hole, they're winning the Ryder Cup. If he hits a poor one, like we're winning the Ryder Cup. Like that's that moment over a handful of shots, like when you're watching the back nine of the Masters with Rory and it's like tied all of a sudden, and then they cut to Justin Rose and you're like, oh, if he makes this par putt on 17, I'm doing the math, he's going to like win this Masters. And then he misses, and then Rory hits one tight, and you're like, oh, wait, he's going to win the Masters. And it's like, we haven't had that at the Ryder Cup, and I'm with you. I think we're due.
I hope you're right. I think you're right. I just can't wait to get there. It's Wednesday. This time next week will be 24 hours from the first lineups coming out.
Unreal, Shane Ryan. Well, once again, I can't plug it enough. Obviously, your work, Golf Digest, awesome. So keep it up there. And then I'm telling everyone, if you want to get 1000x more deeper and informative than we were even able to get for this hour, it is the Cup They Couldn't Lose, America, the Ryder Cup, and the Long Road to Whistling Straits, which is such a good read. So I'll see you up there. I'm going to be there for from like, I think Wednesday through Sunday morning. My parents are going to their first Ryder Cup, so I'm extremely excited to get up there.
I'm going to follow you from a distance like I do sometimes just to experience the world through rigs. Like nobody knows who I am. I like following you. And it's like I think for every 5 steps you take, 10 people call your name. It's unbelievable. So
it'll be a scene in New York.
Maybe I'll walk next to you just to feel what that's like for a moment. But yeah, I can't wait, man. I can't wait to see you. Yeah, it'll be fun.
No, I'm pumped. I'm pumped to see all this plays out. It'll be fun to do a little debrief too. So cool. Yeah, I'll see you up at Bethpage, and thanks for taking the time. Your knowledge on this thing is great. So I think people are going to enjoy kind of hearing it and building up towards this thing.
Yeah, anytime. It was a pleasure.